So, in this video, I'm going to express some opinions about J.K. Rowling. The ones that I'm not really seeing anybody else saying. And just, something that was on my mind that I wanted to get off. I truly think that J.K. Rowling has lost her purpose in life. I think once all the books were done, once all the movies were produced, once she made her $1 billion and she doesn't have to work a job anymore, I truly think that that was her downfall. Like, if you really think about it, she was once a beloved children's author who now has turned into this social media troll. This was bound to happen. And you know why? Because once you have enough money that you don't have to worry about it for the rest of your life, it frees you. It gives you freedom to do whatever you want to do. There's a saying that money doesn't change who you are, it reveals who you are. Something like that. Once you have money, once you have power, how you use it and what you turn yourself into defines you. And it's clear to me that once she found financial freedom, once she fulfilled her destiny, fulfilled her purpose in life, she didn't know what to do. I truly think so. I think that JK is a busy beaver. She needs to stay busy. And the fact that she does not have a job anymore, you know what, bless us middle class people. Yeah, there are a lot of things that, we endure. We endure a shitty job, worrying about paying our bills. It at least keep our mind busy. It at least keeps us, it keeps our life going forward. And not many people have the luxury to completely, unhinged on Twitter. We're just way too busy to do that. You know, I truly think that JK is out of job and she's out of a life purpose. She was born to be a busy beaver, and the fact that she isn't and she has all the time in the world kills her. She has nothing better to do with her time than targeting a already marginalized community who make up less than 1% of the global population. Like, she doesn't realize that trans people are not an issue if we are talking in the grand scheme of things. There are real issues that we are facing. Housing is up. Millennials could buy homes, but now Gen Z is struggling paycheck to paycheck and property prices are going up. The average Gen Z person cannot buy a home or just cannot afford to buy one. There's a crisis happening in the Middle East. Israel is brutally attacking Palestine. There's a genocide happening in the world. There's so much racism going on. And she ignores all of those real issues and talks about what, in my opinion, is a non-issue. Trans people. And it's not just like one opinion or two opinion. She just keeps going and going and going. Like, if you go to her Twitter page and scroll, just keep scrolling till your heart's content, you're just going to find anti-trans propaganda. And you know what's the worst thing is? She truly thinks that she's right. She thinks that the world right now is in a woke phase, that, men identifying as women is now being normalized, but history won't see it as a rational thing to do. And her opinions are going to age well. Girl, let me tell you something. Your opinions are not going to age well. Do you guys remember Anita Bryant? Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Anita Bryant was a failed actress turned into a anti-homosexual preacher. She was an anti-gay rights activist, and she was relentless. She was fixated on criminalizing homosexual behavior and the gays. She was very anti-gay. Not only she expressed her opinion, she campaigned. She wanted policies. She wanted punishments. She went to the grave fighting against the rights of homosexuals. And look how her opinions aged. They didn't age well. Which brings me to my next point. I truly think that J.K. Rowling is the modern day age Anita Bryant. She thinks what she's doing is right, but what she doesn't realize is that her opinions are not going to age well. Because let's talk about it, trans people. I'm just going to say this. If you don't identify or relate to somebody's life experience, okay, if you don't know how that person reached till that point, if you can't relate to it, if you can't understand it, doesn't make it any less valid. Your opinion is not going to erase somebody's life experience. I'll give an example. Sasha Colby. Okay, if you don't know her, she is a very famous drag performer, a Miss Continental winner. She won RuPaul's Drag Race. She is a drag legend. Now, if you see her life journey, she was 18 when she started transitioning. Why? Because she grew up around pageant queens. She grew up around pageant winners. And pageant winners are often trans women, who really want to take their art, their craft, to a next level. That's why a lot of pageant queens transition, because they want to take their drag game to a whole other level of fish, femme realness. There's a term called realness. And some queens take the extra mile, they take the extra step to up their drag game, and they transition. Why? Because they grew up in that culture. They grew up around beautiful, powerful trans women who were idealized, and these aren't just your, average trans women. These were trans women, well settled, had a car, an apartment, had their lives together, and queens like Sasha Colby idealized them and said, hey, maybe one day that could be me, Also, there's, if we're talking about trans people, there's a lot of gender dysmorphia in younger kids, I mean, not a lot, but there are certainly kids who think they were born in a wrong body, that their biological sex does not align with their life experience, who they want to be, and what they don't want to be. Okay? That's their prerogative. That's their right. Like, what a person choose to do with their own body is nobody's business but their own. Also, she talks about, trans women being in women's spaces, because, Joanne, she was once in a homeless shelter that was a women's space. It was a bunch of women who needed help, and it was a women only space. It was a women only shelter. And I feel like her biggest nightmare is that, a trans woman in that kind of space. Here's the thing. If there is one trans woman surrounded by 20 to 30 biological women, the biological women are not in the danger here. The trans woman is. Like, if we're really if you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty, if you really want to be realistic, a trans woman is more open, is more susceptible to physical violence than a biological woman in women only spaces, if we're talking about. Because let's say if if that trans woman who is in that women's shelter turned out to be a predator and she touches a woman, don't you think that all the other women that are surrounded are going to pin that trans woman down and kill her? Like, to me, that's the realistic circumstance. Even if, she was wrongfully accused of it. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't predators, but I'm just saying that the percentage of male heterosexual predators is exponentially high than trans predators. All right? Trans predators won't even make 1% of the total, like pedophilia list. The majority of them has been slanted to straight men. So let's not even talk about predators and stuff like that, because it's the straight people that are the problem there. Guys that are heterosexual. Yeah, which brings me to a very controversial opinion. Another thing that I wanted to talk about. Brianna Ghey. She was a 16-year-old British trans girl who was murdered in a premeditated attack after being lured into a park, and she was fatally stabbed. Now, I'm not saying that JK is responsible for this, heinous act, but I just wanted to make a point. Don't you think that, when celebrities like JK Rowling use their platform to actively spread hate, don't you think that their opinions hold power, influence? Isn't there a possibility that the people who murdered her were influenced or inspired by celebrities actively spreading anti-trans propaganda? I'm not saying J.K. Rowling is responsible for what happened to Brianna Ghey, but let's be honest. This is how it starts. You keep dehumanizing people online. You keep telling your millions of followers that trans people are dangerous, that they are invading spaces, that they are a threat. And somebody out there, someone twisted, angry, confused, takes that message and turns it into action. Words don't stay online. They travel. They get repeated, they get twisted, and they get weaponized. So, no, I'm not blaming her for Brianna's death. I'm just saying that her words exist in the same air that made it possible. At the end of the day, this is not just about Rowling. This is about how power works, about how privilege becomes poison when it's never questioned. Just because you can't relate to someone's life doesn't mean it's not real. You don't have to understand someone's gender identity to respect it. You don't have to get it. You just have to stop hurting it. So if you're still here, thank you. These are not the kind of conversations people want to have, but they're the kind we need to have because lives are literally on the line.